Okay, so this is the section when I want to talk about a philosophy of starting a business, and that is called the Lean Startup. The book that is almost the Bible of this topic is called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. We will discuss it in multiple other sections. And the main idea of this book is validated learning. So it's about turning the growth process and the market research process and the product research process into a scientific process. So the main idea is that you want to start with your minimum viable product. So many people think they need to jump into the big picture of their idea. They need all the money they're going to need, and they just spend big and roll it out, and then to find out there's all sorts of issues that they didn't expect. And this is why overfunding a project in the beginning is a huge mistake, because you haven't learned everything you need to learn. And there's a scientific process for how to go about learning the correct path. And that starts with creating your minimum viable product. That means taking your idea and putting it into the most condensed, small form you can think of. For instance, if you're going to create a job searching website, maybe create a message board first, generate some interest, manually generate some functionalities before you go automating all of your processes, because you don't know which ones are going to be the most important. You think you know, you think you got it all figured out, but we are just people, and sometimes our emotions tell us that facts are facts when they're actually just opinions. So you start off with the minimum version of the business you're trying to create, and then grow from there. And then you begin to test your assumptions. Is this true? How do I test it? Is this true? How do I test it? Split test. These 4 colors, let's try it with each one of these 4 colors and see how people respond in limited, isolated batches. This is what focus groups are for. This is what surveys can help you with. And there's some basic principles. And the first thing is that entrepreneurs are everywhere. Just living your life is an entrepreneurial effort. You're out there, you're testing your assumptions about life, and occasionally we have these broad realizations that can be very painful. So, recognizing that your life is actually something like a business startup is a good way to begin understanding how to do your business startup. You don't want to die. You don't want to hurt your fingers. You don't want to get burned. So you touch it softly and then see how hot it is. Entrepreneurship is management. It's not just having a great idea. And it's not just suddenly lots of money comes in. It's managing the process. It's rolling it out slowly. It's, it's about the context of it. So as an entrepreneur, you need to be accountable to yourself for exercising effective management skills. You must know the process in order to successfully implement the process. It's easier to avoid mistakes when you have it prepared and planned out. And then you're ready for what's called validated learning. And this is where you split test your assumptions. First, you need to be honest enough with yourself to say, what are my assumptions? What do I think is true? Not what do I know? I can set this aside, it's for sure. Test everything. Think of it as a science project. Think of it as a science experiment. You test your assumption, you set up a test for it, and then you can move forward with a certain amount of knowledge. For instance, if you're growing plants, have 4 of the same plant and put 4 different types of fertilizer, 4 different amounts of light, 4 different light schedules, different types of soil, different harvesting times, different harvesting processes. Split test them, 4 of each, to find out which is the best one for you. This is a scientific, regimented way to march yourself towards a conclusion. Instead of just saying, oh, I like this message, I like this color, I think this is the best because I think so. Well, you're only one person. Even if it is brilliant that you thought up this idea, it's just only you in terms of what your opinions are. So then it's innovation accounting. So you look at the results, you factor them in, you can graph them out, you can put them into charts, and anything you can do to help you appraise the results with an open mind. Really, the entire book is about regimenting your approach and then opening your mind to the results, accepting what might be unpleasant. And then finally, you want to build, measure, learn, and you may come to a point that you need to pivot. You need to change the focus, change the target market, change some of the features, take some of them away, perhaps they're too expensive, add some features that you weren't expecting might be necessary. And all of this will come from testing your assumptions from a minimum viable product. I have a story. I had a friend, and he had an idea for a website, and he wouldn't tell any of us what it was. He told his girlfriend, and she told him it was great. But the truth is, he hadn't done really any of the necessary market research. He hadn't consulted with trusted confidants. I was one of his best friends, and he just was determined to go forward with this, and he said, "I'll tell you when I'm ready." I said, "All right." I said, "Whatever you say." And he comes to me months later, and he said, "Yes, I've contracted with the developers. I've purchased a name." He spent $500,000 on the name, place.com. $500,000. I guess of somebody else's money, but it was still money. And it was at least his credibility. And then he had already put $50,000 down on the developer team. And his idea was that he wanted you to be able to know who was in a building, if you were in a skyscraper or if you were in a neighborhood, who was in that building or neighborhood who could do specific skills. Were they photographers? Were they plumbers? You could know where they were walking around in the building. And immediately I said to him, I would never sign up for that. They have my phone number. Go to my website, call my phone number. This is how you reach me. I don't need you to physically know where I'm at. And the other truth of it is that everybody who shows up in this application is going to have to also be signed up for this application. So it's going to be useless in the beginning. You might find people who are interested in knowing where physically customers are, but you're not necessarily going to have the professionals signing up or even knowing about it in time. In hindsight, I think one way he could have pivoted, just in keeping with the concept of lean startup, is that he could have made it a business for employers who want to know where the employees are. So if you're a boss and you want to know where everyone in your department currently is, whether they're on lunch, whether they're in the building, whether they've snuck out of the bathroom and gone down to smoke, this is one way that you could have kept tabs on your team if that is your inclination. And I think there are bosses who would have been interested in that product. But before we could get to that point, it was a wash. They tried it. They struggled with it. I think eventually it was $1 million lost of budget. And if they had followed the principles of lean startup, they could have probably avoided most of it. Let's talk for a second about minimum viable product. How could he have started this idea in a minimum way? Well, he could have started a bulletin board somewhere and seen how people respond to it. Are people willing to put their advertisement up on the bulletin board? It's as simple as that. But he jumped right in with both feet and drowned. So be careful.